Thank you and welcome to the debate. So now you understand what it means to have an 8 years old and a 4 years old. Yeah, you don't basically own your own telephone anymore.
Don't hide behind your children, Jean-Luc.
I do. Look at them.
Can we start?
We can start. So, welcome to the debate, and it's the last day. So today we have actually a very interesting theme, which I'm going to present now after the conversation with Tommy, which is characters' life in drama after the revolution that brought to characters' death. I will just make a short introduction about this. There's been a lot of literature and a lot of discussion and a lot of talks about this problem of the character in the sense representation of a human being that has a psychological core that manifests itself through will and action on stage. So of course through performance art and post-traumatic theater and all of that, the audience start to develop other needs and understanding for being performative, and this character as the center of the performance has been problematized in many ways, and sort of to the extent that some people would state that the concept of character is dead. And that we live in a time after the death of character. Now, Paul writes a lot of interesting things. I think in your book you write a lot of things about character that are very interesting, and the language based and characters with no names. You sort of really try to sort of describe all this new horizon, this new world where we sort of still use a lot the word character, because that's what we do. As you say, we relate to this thing we've done on stage, and we used to call this thing character or my role, or so this word is still there, but we have, or at least a lot of theater people have a lot of problems with that, because they don't want to be associated with an aesthetic or with a way of making theater that they experience as old. So we live in this sort of schizophrenia. They need to describe what we have done on stage and this word that we have some problems with. So in this short time that we have now, which is fun, and I would like to sort of go through, chat together about this, because I think you all somehow also deal with this idea of character. You wrote about it, but also like Frederick has people to find their own artistic character or voice through writing and then sort of performing that. I know that you, Tommy, has a lot of great, as you described before, ideas and thoughts about what is the character that manifests itself in different roles. So I would like to hear a bit about your understanding of character, and also from Tale, and that sort of is also from your work as a dramaturg, how you relate to this problem. So can you just, Tommy, start very briefly to sort of, if you could give us short, like this paradoxical way of talking about time, short description about how you see this problem about the character and the role and how it manifests.
Yeah, for me there is a distinction. So the role is not the same like the character. So we could simplify it in the sense that, okay, I am a character, but I can be in very different roles, and these would be very different stories. Where I usually simplify, okay, you can take Hamlet as a character, that Hamlet, and you could imagine this character, this personality, let's say, in completely different contexts, different roles, and it would be different stories and so on. This is simple, simplifying, but I would say that the character appears. So I think it's much more creative to deal with roles, because then you can have a clear image how you cannot be you cannot transform into a character, but you can be aware of how a character appears. A character actually is appearing in between the performer and the audience. And this awareness of this, how the character is appearing. And this then, if you understand this, then you can understand also this polyvocality, that actually many associations can appear. So many different characters actually can appear. Yeah, so this is, I will stop here.
Yeah.
No, but it was very good, and it's very interesting. I like when it's short. It's very interesting because we could also argue, that the Hamlet character, the Hamlet personality, appears from Hamlet and keeps appearing in so much drama. I mean, we could even argue that Constantine from the Seagull is Hamlet in different roles, right? And they even refer to Hamlet, Constantine, and Irina sometimes. They recites like if they were Hamlet and the mother of Hamlet.
Yeah.
So
Now, something that is connected to what we talked about earlier is that, and of course I'm so excited about it because I was in search of the feeling of truth and truthfulness on stage, and I was really, and I loved actually realism so much and so on, but I had also a problem with it. And so for me, it was really enlightening somehow when I understood something that I need to think about now because I forgot what I wanted to say. That this idea that when we start to search for kind of a consistency. Wait, go on, and I will think to be short. Yeah.
Good.
I will think and to articulate.
Paul, can you try to sort of sum up your description of the language-based character, and can you?
Yeah,
share
I
some
think
thoughts?
there's several ways to look at this. One is that character emerges by the presence of language. That language in itself, this goes to Wittgenstein concepts, but there are other concepts that fall along with this. That ultimately the audiences will create an idea of the character based on language, depending, upon what the form or style or level of language is. The audience is already manifesting a character in their mind. So you take the presence of language and character, an actor, and it creates a character. Now, on the other side, I think there's also stage figures and archetypes. Stage figures like a character like, Superman. I mean, you immediately recognize an Arlecchino, for example, by the costume. So then you associate that character, whether you bulk traits and how much individuation the actor adds to it, or the director, or the particular concept, the production, and manifests this idea of character. We talk a little bit about archetypes in the workshop, but archetypes, like the femme fatale, archetypes from cinema noir, you'll find, or the detective, for example, in a Dashiell Hammett type of story, where you have an archetype and then you add various tropes to it. Maybe they're drunken, or they're out of work, or they're marginalized. Usually these kinds of tropes familiarize an audience with it. So on the one hand, you have, I think, language. Pure language can create character, and that's this idea of characters with no names. And on the other hand, you have the idea of stage figures and archetypes that can then be bulked with various traits and eccentricities to create a sense of individuation.
Erik.
Yeah.
Yeah. Could you sort of could you give us a sort of short understanding of of the way sort of Tostanogov explains and deals with the idea of character?
That's the classical way that you look at what the character says. If it's a play, then you look at what the character says about himself or herself, and you look at what other parts say about the character, and then you look at does it add up with the actions that the character does, and then you find a diversity in what they're saying and what they're doing, and then the actions of that character will give you an idea about that character's values. What are the values of the character, and then so that is one way of. look at the character from two sides. There's this side, and then there's what you could call characterization. I don't know if that's it's a yeah. So characterization might not be as deep as the other way
character.
of work, the character, but it's a physical or vocal language that would tell you something about that character. But I'm very interested in in Norway we have very many dialects, and we often use the dialects to create characters. I'm wondering if when we use dialects, we're obviously gonna touch the audience's prejudices or their feeling about what this character is. For instance, where I come from, we're slow, both in our bodies and in our heads. We're farmers. You know, we can't speak. Short sentences and like, for instance, when I met my wife's family, I couldn't believe my own ears because they were talking all the time. Everybody was talking all the time.
Right.
And they're still having a conversation. And where I come from, there has to be at least 2 breaths
Right.
between every...
Yes.
Yeah.
Exchange.
As some kind of respect. I don't know if you're finished yet, but maybe I'll wait a little bit long, and I would look around and see if anybody else wants to say something before I would. Yeah.
It's like being on a traffic light in Naples.
Yeah, right. So the question is actually how do you deal with that, with people's fordommer?
Prejudice.
Prejudice, yeah.
Well, that's it. I mean, I think that Tommy talked about associations. I mean, the audience is immediately drawing associations from the character that directly relate to their own lives. We've had in the workshop, for example, our writers writing characters and then using multi-languages or within Norwegian or multi-dialects and Finnish, Norwegian, and so forth. And it creates a sense of a character, like a sense of maybe a character that can speak Spanish. Well, maybe that character seems more learned, or maybe a character would have certain knowledge about being a traveler or being aware of more things, so that an audience will bring associations based on what language is being used and how it's being used. But what you're saying also would relate to archetypes, because you would see the language and then associate it with a sociolect almost, right? As a dialect, but also a sociolect. So you would see a class of people maybe represented, synecdochally by one character, right? And that would give a sense of where that person is from and what biases and what prejudices and so forth. Like in the South, now we have a thing like a reckon, when those guys get up behind Trump and doing all this stuff. I mean, you immediately know what this guy is doing. He's got the truck hat on. So you get an idea of the class, but it's just an immediate signification.
Tade, and I want to also go back to Fredrik. How do you, sort of from a dramaturg also point of view, I mean, how when you read, I'm also very interested in the reading and I mean, how is evolving the reading strategies and the talking around this thing, about this problem about character?
I will answer that very quickly, and then I wanted to make 2 other points,
Yes,
which I think
do
is
so.
important. Reading is reading is connected. Reading play is connected to reading other literature, right? So, for instance, reading a novel or short stories, there are characters, and of course, novels and short stories or literature has gone through huge transformation when it comes to character. So we're already trained in seeing characters that are not characters, that are constructs of language, or like are also associations. And so when we read, it's very different from when producing theatre, I think. And what the dramaturg then does is like trying to translate that reading into theatre. So that's one process. But this idea of the death of the character, I think that we needed to kill the character to invent a new one. And I think this invention of the new, and I think this killing of the character happened with a real new understanding of what it is to be a human being. And the death of character in art represent a kind of trauma in the world after, the end of the colonies and the Second World War and all this, the loss of meaning and trying to exist with that. And then the next step is sort of when that sort of killing process was over, then came the need for new dramaturgies, and that created lust. And that's because I really, really appreciate the emphasis on trauma, but of course, language and narration is also based on lust or in joy, the joy of seeing something that you or relating to something outside yourself. And these new characters that we see are the hybrid characters of Paul. So the death of characters in there, the old understanding of the character is there, and then this new understanding, and there's the play between these. And that's the exciting thing, yeah.
Yeah, I agree. There's a free zone attention, which is something that, like we were talking about, I kept thinking about the idea of technique and, the opera singer, for example, who...
The what?
The opera singer, for example, like, okay, he wants to bridge head voice and chest voice, but he has to go through this process of technique that's so artificial and then arrives at something that's so beautifully natural. And these kinds of contradictions, that like the hybrid, so you can have this contradiction in a character or this splitting of a character who immediately changes vocal level on a dime, and it creates a sense of wonder.
And like then you can have a flat character or a character like a late modernist character without a name, for instance, like it's in Lyger and Fosse, and then you can give this character a name. And then you can take that name away from it, and it will be an archetype. He takes up his suits and he's Superman. And this kind of new way of playing with it means that the old character is present. Our understanding of ourselves as human beings, whole human beings, being real and true and all this. It's there on stage. And then the flat character can be there, and the archetype can be there. And the new situation is the lust of playing with these.
But it seems to me that there is also a problem of taking seriously the audience, in the sense that I feel that when we meet as humans, we are also in a sort of contract exchange. I mean, I wish to be seen in a certain way. I wish to be meet in a certain way. And do you see me in this way, or do you confirm this, or you show me something that I'm not trying to see? There is a sort of.
But this is a social contract. You're using your term social contract. We need to appear as something consistent, because can you imagine if there wasn't any consistency and that was completely unpredictable?
Like you are.
You see, and then I create, we would be all the time like, okay, so let's agree that you are that Frederick that I met yesterday, and so we try to, this is the social agreement, which is very important.
And it's also a neurobiological truth.
Yes.
That we create these narratives, and this we use them as in a way of understanding the world in our real lives, and that's we're all in that way surrounded by fiction all the time, and we live in our own fictional reality and our own narrative,
And constantly recreated.
Constantly.
But I like the idea, particularly dramaturgically, of interruption, allowed noise and changes of character, immediate shifts in character that reorient our viewing. So we're shaken, from like this kind of relaxed comfort, or like coziness, with the character, and we're shook into another spot, which we were talking about, shaped up, and this reorients our thinking, so we have to get re-involved, and it I think re-energizes the audience to go into it at another level.
But I also think, like, you bring up the audience is very interesting with these new forms of dramaturgy, which comes from the spoken word or from stand-up and so on. I've been actually working with stand-up myself to understand that actually then the whole thing is dialogical with the audience. There is nothing without the audience. But actually, we could do our performances sometimes in the theatre, and we didn't really need them to be there. We need them to applaud at the end. But that's the thing. But like with these new forms, which I think really, I think it's a need for it in the theatre and in the audience as well. It's with the audience all the time. I don't know if you can say some and then there's another character appearing, isn't there?
Yeah, it's really about empathy
Yeah.
in a way. It's not that a mental construct sort of thing. It's a truth in theater that requires empathy in a circulation between the audience and the actor. Empathy for me as an actor to understand my character, and empathy from the audience in a way of like what's the opposite of narrowing? It's opening
Open,
up
yeah.
for
Opening,
yeah. So that's one thing, and another like the underlying mechanism here is the fact that Tommy was talking about, how we are our own narratives, and that is why a complex character also needs to have this inner world, which we instinctively respond to, and because all real persons are in their own fictional selves. This is why I like and I'm really interested in conspiracy theories, because conspiracy theories are a sort of fiction bigger than fiction in a way. It's a fiction about how the world works, and
It's how Trump governs, too, by the way.
yeah. And what is anxiety? For me, anxiety is literally a conspiracy theory about myself and how my world is and what the future is going to be. And we're all on this mental level encapsulated in this bubble.
In fact, there's a psychoanalytical interpretation of what trauma is that when the two worlds, the inner world and the outer world, mix in. But why? Because we have all the time these fantasies which we are not aware of, which are completely impossible. We are experimenting, playing with the impossible possibilities. And when the event, outside event, is too close to this impossible fantasy, there is a shake of the inner and the outer somehow, and it's a collapse of the system somehow. It's the collapse of our house that is built somehow. But this is connected to this topic that we are speaking of, because the idea of some consistency, that we are consistent, is absolutely illusional. Is just something that we try to we reassure each other. But actually, if you if we watch a little bit ourselves in different moments of our lives, what is there anything consistent there? You could speak, just the opposite. So the only fact, yesterday, Katja, when we spoke a little bit about this, says, yes, the only fact that is the red line is that it is you, but actually it is so many different you. Yeah.
And there's still it's like a tension there, right? Between the things you can't escape, that's you. You can't escape it, and all these other.
Yeah,
Yeah.
But I remember the link that I wanted to do, because this is a connection to why I appreciate it also, your work, and it's inspiring. And I think it's connecting also that this playwriting, in many cases, comes from the theater. So what is possible in theater? In theater, there are some unique things that are possible that are not possible in other medium.
I think this is important because rather than it being drama on the page per se, it's meant to be theatrical.
Yes.
Yeah,
But and this means like, okay, so this means that here is me in the past, for example, or all this is me. Or you have 6 people playing one character, or you have a...
And if you're multilingual, it's also like
Exactly.
It's
Or you can be in, you can have this unique thing that we can speak. You are, I don't know, in Johannesburg, and I am in Oslo, and we can have a dialogue. Or, for example, you are dead and I'm alive, but we can meet and we can embrace, and we can also chat with the audience and so on. So this is possible. It's not possible in the movie. It's not possible in music. It's possible only in theater. And so yeah, and I must say there are many playwrights that grasp this, that they start to play with what is appearing and happening and functioning in this,
Arena.
yeah, because just the last thing, this is very much connected to the process that I was describing, that I'm in at the moment. And I was telling about the playwright that wrote a play, and that there are some stories, also some material that the actors brought in. And it's so exciting to see what is appearing when you have like a story that factually doesn't have anything to do with the play. But when you hear this story, it affects how you hear something, an event in the play. I cannot describe it now more clearly, but it's interesting that it's not on the level of realistic truth, but it's completely on some other level, associative level, or meaning that, and I think that the dramaturgy that we are speaking about plays with this fact.
Well,
But
some of it's the idea that language creates space. Just the idea of traveling through space, which we talked about at Nauning, for example, where the actor is maybe stepping back from the impersonation or from the sense of character, but just sending the audience on a voyage, through language. And these kinds of colorations, for example, can open up. You can't really do that in film.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, but also
And you can make like a crack, you can make that travel like, and then you make a crack and you come up with like just a side story, which seems like to be completely irrelevant, but that fills everything that happens after that. It's like water that sips up, and then everything gets saturated and contaminated by that, and the meaning change. It's really interesting.
But I think if we can go back a second to the theme of the day. No, you're saying great things. It's amazing. I love this. And I have a lot of thoughts which I'm censoring because I'm supposed to be moderating.
Thank you, Shimon.
I know you're happy about that. What I was trying to say. I think if we can go back to the theme of the day, we can also think about the fact that this need, as you call it, to kill the character in order to reinvent the character is a need to kill an ideology that was given for granted. That, at some point, you just assume that theater is supposed to be made like this. And this also is connected to professionalism and to the commercial, predictability of making theater. And then you stop taking seriously the theater as a room where you can create a contract, an alphabet with the audience that, sort of brings you to an experience. And I think more than killing the character, I think we killed an ideology of understanding the character. Which was really needed in order to sort of rediscover the possibilities of theatricality. What do you think about this? I don't know, it could be a way to sum up some of the things we have discussed about. Silence.
yeah,
I got lots to say about it, and I'm really curious about what Lars-Erik thinks about that. You know what
No, we talked over there,
yeah.
and I've been wondering all this workshop and actually all my life when are you guys going to expose me as an imposter? Because it's a virus.
That's what
Yeah.
Brecht has said about himself. I mean, Brecht was always this idea that I'm the imposter and I'm coming into space and I'm the criminal. That kind of thing has always been the vibe. I mean, I guess from my side, but is that it's wide open. It's wide open. We have this thing called crossover right now. I think we're like a lot of language techniques are being brought into more of an accessible idea. In other words, let's start the audience off in a traditional form, and then everybody's comfortable, and then, and then zap it. And so, then go off into other things and maybe come back. But it's always left sort of open. But I think this idea that the character can go through, well, I should say the actor, the performative character versus the idea of character. The character that is performing in various idioms or using various aspects of their body, various aspects of their voice. But I think it's all internally connected. I don't think it's like it's bullshit. In other words, I don't think it's something that's contrived or not something where there's a truth. There's a truth in it. It's just that one can move from these various idioms within a construct of an evening, for example.
I have a feeling that when I worked as an actor, and I sometimes do now too, but the character and me is constantly changed. It's changed all the like now it's me that's working actually, and I don't care about the character, and then suddenly the character is doing something that I couldn't do, and actually maybe we shouldn't be so occupied by character. I don't know, because it's actually being there in the moment that counts, and if you are there, then something is going to emerge, and the concept of the character will interrupt me.
Or maybe we could embrace the polyvocality within the actor, that the actor has different sources or voices or places where the actor is creating from, and that these sort of sources and places, they don't need to sort of be coherent or consistent to each other like a sort of overall identity that we sort of
And if
accept.
that's going to happen, then we have to start to be really interested in the actors. I mean, more interested in the actors than actually maybe ourselves sometimes. Because to be able to take that seriously, they shouldn't just be someone watching us, defining them and talking about them and giving them parts and so on. They should actually be here up on stage with us.
I think if this idea, as you can probably recall, the psychophysical actor from the Grotowski days, where the actor was trained in to speak from different centers and occipital resonators and get very, very almost like a spiritual voyage. Grotowski went to. Well, he was in Pontevedra.
Yeah, well, he lived in Pontedera for many, many years, and that's where he ended up his research.
I mean, I know Schechner tried these experiments, and I went to some of these workshops when he was doing Commune on it. This idea that there are all kinds of different associations, and that in one of those productions of his, for example, you would move from, Charles Manson's world to the battlefield at My Lai in Vietnam, and so into some kind of classical world. So that these really were kind of polyvocal, but the training itself was indigenous to the idea of the director who was doing it, whether it was Grotowski or Schechner.
But actually, Grotowski was very aware of this polyvocality, because actually also working on this Constant Prince was exactly this, developing a very specific memory of Cislak, but then put in completely different context. And also his later work was all about actually, it was very much connected to this, I think you can connect this,
It'd be interesting to connect those two, though, the psychophysical acting and polyvocality as a kind of...
You can find the connections,
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
When many actors talk about feeling more alive on stage than in actual life. Could you say something about that from the point of psychodrama's perspective?
It's connected to spontaneity, to the warming up process. So spontaneity is, in Moreno's view, it's counterbalanced by anxiety. So that is why many times the actors say, "Oh, I felt stage fright." When the moment when I was on stage, I didn't feel fear anymore. So the approach to put down the stage fright is not by get rid of stage fright, but actually the lifting of playfulness, the lifting of the warming up process anyway. So it is, but it's also, I think that for me, at least how I understand the stage is, for me, it is the proof, or I take it as a space to prove that it is possible to be free. At least a little bit, but it is possible. I'm so disappointed in theater, actually, and I think that maybe we share this feeling, when someone doesn't take the chance to do what we don't do in life, or we don't manage to do in life. And so I see the theater as the performer, actually. It's like when someone is doing this, when someone is going there, we are all like, yeah, go. Okay, because it's a proof somehow of that, of something that we would like.
It's like an affirmation, yeah.
It's like, we would like, it's a proof that it's possible to be alive somehow, It's the proof of life.
Well,
It's
so
a fight
that's-
for life. So
that's-
that is why I take theater as a fight for life.
But could one also say that it's something to do with that, like you said, that when I do psychodrama, I'm there for the one I'm with. And you said when I do theater, it's something else, right? It's different roles.
Between the director and the
Yeah,
character.
yeah.
What about that?
Because maybe that's also something that has to do with how to make that freedom happen that you talk about, which I totally agree. We really need that. It's possible to be free. Then maybe there's something to do with the way we listen or respond to the actor when we work with the actor in the process, right? Because if we really want that freedom to happen, we have to create that possibility of being free, yeah?
Yeah, but this freedom won't happen. It's a complex story, because it goes back also, there is a reason why there is a limit to this freedom, but it's connected to, it's again, we should have the anthropological story again here, which I won't go into. My thing to be, for me it was very important, the understanding that the art is not about the real but the unreal, for me. It was very important. And also on the level of realism, because we discover actually the excitement of the story is always when someone is not doing what you predict him or her to do, but something else. It's surprising, or something is like completely. It's completely. You can't believe somehow. So, and this makes the story. So we are in search for the non-usual, non-normal, non-real, essentially, basically. And so if you take this further, as in theater, actually, in theater you expect someone, for example, you can have a consistent and classical, you can have a classical performance, drama performance. You wait for 1 hour or 2 hours that someone will stop and say something completely, out of another world. Everyone probably had this fantasy. You say, okay, we are watching now this for 1 hour and a half or 2 hours. It's terribly boring. And now, you will start to fantasize that something completely weird, bizarre, unreal will happen. So for me, this was an important twist that I cannot describe all the consequences of, and which bring me to polyvocality and to Frederick's work and to...
Well, I like this idea of this creating this ontology, man. It's like theater of wonder, right? That's what it is. But it's an ontology. It's a world separate. It's not unreal. It's just what it is. It's a whole world.
Yeah. When I say unreal, I should define it. I should define it, of course. But it's... it doesn't matter. And there's something that you said just the last day. You said, when I say white here, people think about the black, So it's understanding the position of the audience in the theater so creating from there that makes you understand what's going on here.
this relationship.
Because in the audience, when I said, okay, I will tell you the truth now, I will tell you a real story, now they will start to investigate and doubt, okay, yeah, you are sure, sure, that's real, okay. When I will say, okay, now this has never happened, it's completely fake, you know, blah, 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 blah. They will start to investigate, is that true, you know? So, but this is just one example. So we are dealing with something very specific. It's not in all the art. It's in the theater, and you know. Yeah.
I want to, because Fredrik has had the sort of.
Yes, for me, as like when I started out acting, it was also really important, not just acting, but performing on stage. And I like went to the School of Life theater school, and I had to figure out these things myself. And in the beginning, I was challenged a lot by stage fright and how to like romme. What's a good
To
word?
give, contain, yeah.
Contain whatever like happened energetically in my body when I performed. So for me, it was like, to answer your question 5 minutes ago, it's for me it's really, really important having like a grounded sense in the body, and like feeling a connection to the surface beneath me, and just literally being grounded. And that creates not only a way of containing whatever arises, but also a much greater sense of like this meditational nowness, and a sense of listening to the audience, and making this like sort of contact.
And one thing I would say, in your work that you were doing, there's a pulse, right, to it, so that it's creating a sense internally in terms of the audience. You know, it's like a beat thing that's working within, that's kind of almost meta language, if you will, that's coming through. I mean, when I saw your performance, it conjures images, the shadow characters and so forth that come into being. Very interesting.
But for me, it's just to like repeat that it's an exercise. Basically, performing is an exercise in managing to create this greater sense of whatever inner light we are talking about.
Now, we're 10 minutes over time. This was a great conversation. Okay, so I'm like I hate to be the party people, like to destroy nice moments, but we have to respect the timetable. So this is the last day of the festival. We are concluding this. It's been a great week, and I just want to say also to me that is here, and Mariken that I don't see here today, but it's been really a pleasure to be with you guys. Talking and getting to know you better, because that's what we do. We get to know each other better, and maybe in that getting to know each other better, something happens that has some relevance. And I want to say thank you to all the audience that came here, and the people that have been watching on the internet, and maybe we'll do it in the future. And we will come back with this festival in 2 years, in June, from the 3rd to the 9th of June 2020. It will be a year that will be really focused on, hopefully, maybe on film, but we'll see. That's the ambition. So I hope you enjoyed, and I hope you can enjoy the rest of the day, the last day of the workshops, and come tonight with these performances, because while we're talking here, there is some people in KIO, 20 actors and some directors and writers, and they're making these 10 minutes performances. They've been working all night here at KIO, drinking coffee, and very excited. So it's going to be exciting to go there and meet this energy. So there are sort of parallel universes, and this is something I really liked about the festival these days, that it's a network of things happening, and probably it was very hard to be part of all of it, but we are part of this network. And so I want to thank you so much for being here and participating, and an applause to Rose, because she made this possible. because
Can I just
yeah.
can I just say one thing? Because I think, like Tommy said, like when these changes happen, like the death of the character and these new hybrid forms, something also happens to the way we produce theatre. Like you said, I have other methods than the 8-week rehearsal period, right? And also the hierarchies change, and the way we also become audiences, like with Fredrik's art form and so on. And my big dream is that when we talk about this next time, we'll also talk about that. Talk about the hierarchies. Talk about how we are placed, how we're given parts, how the actor's part is in this. And I really mean that. The only voice I've missed, I would like to have had more of you guys. So thank you for being here.